really hard though. Like, what genre do you want? I'll check it out. Thanks, man. No problem.
Manga released in English? This is a common question that comes up whenever new manga licenses are announced. There are many reasons behind why some manga series get licensed, while others don't. In this video, I wanted to discuss how manga publishing companies decide which series to license, and 3 major factors for why some series still remain unlicensed. With these 3 major factors being: 1. The manga being too old, too long, or too obscure. 2. The genre or manga creator having poor sales in the past. And 3.
Okay.
The manga creator or license holder saying no.
Okay.
From what I've noticed over the years, when it comes to English manga publishing companies, there are usually 3 key moments when a manga series is much more likely to get licensed. These 3 key moments are when an anime adaptation for a manga series gets announced, when an anime adaptation for a manga is already airing or completed, and when a manga series is from an already established creator. My reasoning for these being the 3 key moments is because when a series is already pretty established with other media, usually an anime, but it can be other media like a game, then it helps publishing companies gauge the level of popularity that a manga will have once they actually release it, since there is already a built-in audience that is aware of the series' existence and knows what it's about. Also, if a manga creator has a lot of name recognition and their other series have sold well in the past, it's less of a risk for publishers to release a series that may not have an anime or other media tie-in to help promote it. With that being said, my reasoning does not work with 100% of the series out there, and at the end of the day, all of this is just conjecture from a fan's point of view. Michael Gambos, the senior director of licensed publications for Dark Horse, a prominent manga and comics publishing company, shared Dark Horse's approach to how licensing decisions are made in an interview with Comic Attack. How does your company decide which titles it will license in America? Overseas popularity, fan suggestions, cross-marketing with anime titles, etc. All of the factors you mentioned play into how we make our decisions. Ultimately though, as Dark Horse Comics Inc. is solely owned by Mike Richardson, the final decision lies with him. We do have a manga team of sorts who are responsible for bringing titles to the table and then sharing said titles with the other people on the committee. We'll talk about the strengths of each title, how we'd publish it, format, etc., and when and why it'd make sense for us to do or not to do that particular title. After Dark Horse was bought in late 2021, their approach to licensing may have changed over the years since this interview was conducted. With that being said, Gambos' comments do still give us a clearer picture of what publishers look for when considering which manga series to license. Also, while it was only briefly brought up in Michael Gambos' interview, fan suggestions do play a role in helping publishers decide which series to license. Sublime, Viz Media, as well as Kodansha in the past, have and still do conduct reader surveys. In these surveys, they'll ask fans to let them know what titles they would like to see get licensed in English. Reader feedback is important in making these licensing decisions because it gives publishers an idea of.
I don't see enough people in the manga space really talking about doing surveys and things like that, so that's very interesting. Yeah, I think I've done this like once or twice, but there's not really many series that I know about that I would want a manga adaptation for. That's my thing. I'm more so reading reading the stuff that I got in my collection now. I'm trying to read it to 100%, but I know it's not going to be possible within this year.
Of a series' popularity shows what genres readers are interested in at that time, and it may also alert publishers of a series that they might not have heard of before. Since fan feedback is so important, I'll have these reader surveys linked in the description down below for anyone interested in requesting a series. You can request any BL manga in the Sublime survey, and any manga published by Shueisha, Shogakukan, or Hakusensha in the Viz Media survey. If you are curious to find out what Japanese publisher a manga is from, it'll usually say on the series Wikipedia page. While I've spoken a lot about how publishers decide which series to license, let's get into the reasons behind why some very popular and well-loved series still remain unlicensed.
Manga being too old.
In Japan, whenever a manga is very popular and financially successful, it gets to stay in serialization for a longer period of time, as long as the creator wishes to keep working on the series, or hand it over to someone else. However, the longer a manga is serialized, the more volumes of it are released. Now this is obviously a great thing for the manga creator and the Japanese publisher, but if an older and very long-running manga series hasn't already been released in English, the backlog of volumes that English manga publishing companies will have to release will be gigantic. This all compounds to
I agree. I feel like series like Hajime no Ippo that are just too far out at this point, I feel like it wouldn't sell well in America. That's how I feel. I just feel like it wouldn't sell well in America. I could be wrong, but I just feel like it wouldn't sell well. Like, I don't see many people talk about Hajime no Ippo, whether it be the manga or the anime adaptation itself. Like it's respected amongst in the community, but no one really talks about like really wanting it though. Like I've heard people say they want it, but not a lot of people. Like it's not in droves.
To a greater financial risk for the English manga publishing companies because of the many costs associated with releasing physical manga, with some of these costs being printing, shipping, distribution, warehousing, and marketing of the final product. Generally speaking, the first volume of a manga series is the highest selling volume. This is due to it being the introduction to the story. As more volumes of a series are released, it becomes increasingly difficult for publishers to sell later volumes due to various reasons, with some of these reasons being readers losing interest in the series over time, either due to the story or art just not being for them, wanting to preserve limited shelf space for other series, or just not being aware that a new volume has been released, possibly due to there being a long gap since the last volume came out. So while many people would be ecstatic to pick up the first volumes of some very long-running manga series, like Kingdom or Hajime no Ippo, it's very difficult for publishing companies to tell how well the later volumes of these series would sell years down the line. With all that being said, there are ways that publishing companies can reduce the financial risk of releasing older and longer series. One way they do this is by releasing the manga digitally first.
Oh, see, I get why they release it digitally just to see who will want to buy it. But let's be real. I feel like a lot of the majority of collectors or people who buy manga don't buy manga digitally. I feel like that's a very small, minute amount of people that'll do that. And plus, if you buy it digitally, you want to buy it physically too. So now you double dipping. You bought the same manga volume twice. I don't like that logic. I get it to gauge how many people would want it, but I don't think that's a good way to gauge it because physical manga versus digital manga is such a to me it's two different it's two different things. To me, though. I could be wrong though. But I know that they either do digital or they do it in the omnibus format to make the releases a bit more quicker and to catch up faster because doing 2-in-1s or 3-in-1s is way quicker than doing just one volume each time you want to release a volume. So yeah. Digital is dumb. I don't think it's dumb necessarily because some people just don't want a lot of clutter and they still want to support. I just think it's a dumb way to gauge how many people want to buy this series and want to read it. I don't know. That's just me.
A popular example of this is Kodansha's Digital First program. Releasing manga digitally cuts out many of the costs that come with publishing physical manga that I mentioned earlier, but publishers do still have to pay any expenses related to licensing, translation, and localization of the manga, which can cost a lot for longer series. Releasing manga digitally first also helps companies gauge the level of interest that a particular manga will have before they decide to release it physically, therefore allowing them to release series that may be more obscure titles due to the lower financial risk of digital distribution. While I personally don't buy digital manga volumes, I do have a Shonen Jump subscription. And if I had to bet on it, I'd say that Viz Media definitely takes digital popularity into account when they're deciding which series to release physically.
Yeah, but these series were already doing good in the weekly Shonen Jump magazine or whatever magazine they come from. They're already doing well. They don't have that many chapters compared to some of the long running series like a Hajime no Ippo, like a Kingdom, like a One Piece. They I get this. I get it. He's educating us. I'm talking more on the publisher side. And plus the Shonen Jump app is like $1.99. It's such a low cost for so much game, for so much entertainment. You get paid like $2.99 a month now, and you get like 100 chapters a day. Most people ain't reading 100 chapters in one day. So that's a lot. I get it. You're using that to help see what will sell, but these series are newer, the hottest thing on the block right now. This stuff is going to sell. People definitely buy in the hype, especially within this community itself.
Someone that prefers physical manga,
You could just as easily pirate it. I agree. Only thing good about digital releases is that we get the pirate official translation and good scans. For the purpose of me still saving being able to work with companies later, I will say I see your point. I agree. But I see your point. I see your point. And I agree. But like I said, we're not going to talk about that.
do understand why many people would be upset when a manga series they enjoy is only available digitally. But we also have to understand that it does help some series potentially get released physically later on if we support it digitally first. Another way that publishing companies reduce costs is by doing smaller print runs for later volumes in a series. Since manga publishing companies know that readers' interest in a particular series will most likely decline over the course of its run, they'll print less copies of the later
probably like Gintama. I feel like Gintama will be an example for this.
Volumes for that series, so that it's still possible to.
I read 100 chapters a day. Do you think you're the average manga reader though, Ishigami? The average manga reader. I read like 5 chapters a day. I try to read a volume a day. That's my general rule. A volume a day is pretty good.
Turn a profit.
Some
This
days I
also
do skip
explains
out,
why
but hey, I try.
later volumes of many manga go out of print much faster than the earlier volumes, leading to them being much more expensive and harder to find than the earlier volumes, since there was most likely much less of the later
If it's like shonen, I can read real fast. Same.
volumes printed in the first place. Probably the most common way that most manga publishing companies are able to release older, longer, and more obscure
Remember, I
manga
told you
physically
omnibuses.
is by releasing them in omnibus format. By releasing a manga series in a 2-in-1 or 3-in-1 format, it allows publishers to catch up to the Japanese release much faster, while also reducing the risk of readers losing interest in a series during its release cycle. Because omnibus editions allow the actual number of volumes that a company has to release to be a fraction of what the original single volume release was. So even if a series isn't selling too well, the publishing company won't have to make as long of a financial or time commitment publishing that particular series, allowing them to put more resources towards a series that may be more successful in a shorter period of time. At the end of the day, these manga publishing companies are businesses that have to try their best to be profitable, but sometimes certain genres of manga just aren't the greatest sellers.
I wonder who said that. The genre of manga creator having
Historically, some genres of manga just haven't sold too well in the English manga market. Comedy manga seems to be one of these genres. Let me explain.
Yeah, because comedy over in Japan isn't the same as comedy over here in the West. We don't have to stay on this point.
When taking a look at how some comedy series have ended up in the past, some famous examples are Gintama and Bobo Bobo Bobo. Both of these series
it's Bobo 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 Bobo. That's how you say it, my guy. I love Bobo Bobo. I understand. It definitely wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea.
were
if I read 100 chapters a day, I would be done with my collection in one day. Same. No, I read manga way too much. Oh, okay.
Popular and long-running comedy manga in Japan that were unfortunately discontinued by Viz Media before they could finish serialization in English. Based on
I mean, heck, Bobo 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 started in the middle of its serialization in America. Like volume 1 isn't even actual volume 1 or whatever. Or the first volume, whatever it is.
the sales data that I could find for these series, poor sales did likely play a role in Viz Media's decision to discontinue them. However, I do have to be fair to Viz, and to mention that around the time that Gintama and many other manga were discontinued, the Borders bookstore chain had just shut down, which was a huge sales driver for manga sales in the US at the time. This was also around the time of a recession, so people had less discretionary spending to use on things like manga, with all of this leading to many publishers having to downsize by laying off workers and reducing the amount of series they were publishing.
Hi, my biggest W is that I'm up to date with the One Piece manga. Oh, that's a W. Do you have a My Anime list, Chase? Yeah, it's in my link tree. It's in my link tree. Do exclamation point socials.
With some publishers just shutting down operations altogether. Since then, manga sales have skyrocketed. Plus, in general, it's pretty rare nowadays for publishers to stop publishing a series during the middle of its run. Publishers begin releasing series with the intention of finishing them, but if a series isn't selling particularly well, they'll slow down the release cycle of the series, basically releasing it less frequently than they did before. This way they can allocate less time, money.
Alright, let's skip this part. It's almost time to
In general, publishing companies can't disclose if they are in the process of trying to license a series, because they may lose the opportunity to license it. This means that if a manga creator or their estate doesn't want their series to be released overseas, it would probably never be publicized. With that being said, we can speculate on a couple of reasons for why a manga creator or their estate may not agree to their series getting released in a certain region, with the first reason being how the financial situation between the Japanese publisher and the overseas publisher may not align. Basically, the licensing fee that the manga creator or the Japanese publisher are asking for may be too high for the overseas publisher. So the overseas publisher might think that they won't make enough money from the manga's potential sales to justify the costs and resources associated with releasing a manga physically or digitally. Another reason for why a manga creator may say no could be due to how they're worried that their work could be misinterpreted by a foreign audience. There weren't any concrete examples that I could find of a manga creator outright saying that they didn't want their series released overseas. The closest thing that I could find was in the afterward.
Where's my mallet? Where's my mallet? Here, we'll finish out this stream with this because this is kind of self-explanatory.